Kid bandits and a new village. Satu here. Every time I watch the treasure hunting TV show Hidden Cash in Your Home, I can't help thinking, their taxes must have been murder that year. But then, my taxes are bad enough as it is. Take this, sir. Pochi's short sword stabbed at the leg of the thief's boss. Don't underestimate me, little girl. The boss raised his axe high overhead to crush her. MRRR. Here. At that moment, an arrow from Mia's short bow and a stone from Tama struck the man's arms, disrupting his attack on Pochi. Grr, that's enough out of you, you. Even as he staggered back, the boss tried to intimidate us, but then Aris's psychic magic spell mind blow came out of nowhere. The man lost consciousness immediately and slumped to the ground like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Once Aris's magic had knocked out all the thieves, we stripped them of their weapons and tied them up with rope in the middle of a meadow near the main road. So what are we going to do with these fellows? Well, what would people normally do in this situation? I didn't know the answer to Aris's question, so I responded with one of my own, about the standard practices of this world. Since all the bandits we'd met so far were ordinary villagers without a bounty to their name, we'd just knocked them about a bit, disarmed them, and sent them scurrying away with the help of my coercion, skill and Aris's fear magic. If they have caused trouble, the usual practice is beheading. If you bring the head of a thief to a town or city guard, you will receive a reward for their extermination. Lisa was the one who answered my question. That's a pretty violent way to handle things. I'd prefer a method that's a bit more peaceful, if possible. What if they haven't caused any trouble? Then one generally brings them to the city alive. In that case, the thieves will be sold to slave traders as criminal slaves, and the person who apprehended them will receive half the price in addition to the reward. So in the latter case, the city increases their labor force in addition to protecting the peace. This probably worked because of the contract skill. Should we bring them back to the town we passed by earlier, then? No, let's just dig a hole and toss them in it. As proof, I used my pitfall spell to create a hole under the thieves that they wouldn't escape from easily. Now that our safety was secured, I dismissed the shelter wall that was protecting Lulu and the carriage. I'd asked Lulu to look after our horses and vehicle while we took care of things, but now she was wearing a dispirited expression. Are you alright, Lulu? Why yes. Such a gentle girl was probably shocked to see people wounded in battle. As she sorted through our spoils, Tama found something of interest and brought it over to me. Gabo fruit. In Tama's hands was a root vegetable, about the size of a fist, that looked like a red miniature pumpkin. To my memory, Gabo fruits made up for their gross taste by being nutritious and easy to cultivate, so it was no surprise that they'd be grown in the Mono barony. However, since they were a favorite food of goblins, they were only supposed to be grown in cities or other walled-in areas. Checking the town we'd just passed, I found that they were being raised in huge quantities. According to the map, about 2/3 of the area of the town had been converted into fields. Normally, this wouldn't be too surprising in a territory as plagued by famine as this one. Still, I couldn't help but suspect that there was more to it, since there was a demon masquerading as a magistrate. Searching the map for goblins, I found 5 or so small settlements of demi-goblins in the large forest near Mono City. Each settlement was comprised of only 30 goblins or so, and they weren't close together, so I concluded that they probably weren't being bred deliberately. What's the difference between a goblin and a demi-goblin, though? Since demi usually referred to some kind of subspecies, it had to be a particular subspecies of goblins. Monster subspecies would be strong, but they were all only between level 1 and 3, so they wouldn't pose a problem for us. At any rate, that was probably enough information about Gabo fruits and demi-goblins for now. I put the sorted loot in storage, and we left that area behind us. After another 2 days of travel, we began our 6th afternoon since entering the Mono barony. This time, we encountered a troublesome band of thieves. Oh, it's those kid bandits we heard about a while ago. Yeah, seems that way. 5 young girls were lying across the road, blocking the carriage's path. I get that they're trying to stop us and all, but even recklessness should have its limits. Don't move. There are 10 shooters aiming at your horses from the woods. A young boy emerged from the forest, threatening us in a cracking, prepubescent voice. Lisa stopped her horse in front of the kid bandits to guard the carriage, while Nana moved to protect Lulu and me in the coachman's stand. Of course, the boy was bluffing. I had already determined with a map search that they didn't have any bows or slings. They were holding stones, but we could easily handle a few kids throwing rocks at us. I warned Lisa and Nana not to act unless things got dangerous. Give us some food if you value your lives. The boy's brash request might have sounded impressive if it weren't for the debate that followed. Yeah, especially your potatoes. Shouldn't we tell them to give us jerky instead? I wanna try some bread. Anything is fine, as long as it isn't weeds. Shut up, you're dummies. Takes one to know one, dummy. Just be quiet. As the peanut gallery chimed in with their requests, the whole mood was ruined. I didn't mind giving them food, but I'd like to get the road cleared first if possible. Private Pochi, Private Tama, you are in charge of getting those little girls out of the street. Don't hurt them, though, okay. Aye aye, sir. Roger, sir. Tama and Pochi gave a military-style salute they'd learned from Arisa, then jumped out of the carriage. I got down as well, picking up one of the kids who was blocking our path and gently tossing her toward the children in the woods. The other kids scrambled frantically to catch her. As I looked for the next kid, I noticed Pochi and Tama had neglected their road clearing duties in favor of plopping down next to the girls and peering into their faces. They look hungry, why? Rumbly tummies, sir. Tama and Pochi rummaged around in their pockets and started feeding the girls whatever scraps of dried meat and baked goods they could find. Meat. It's yummy. Thank you. The young girls raised a little cheer in unison. Then Pochi and Tama noticed me watching them. With a few shifty glances, they quickly hustled 2 of the girls off to the side of the road. One of the remaining 2 panicked and hurried after them into the forest. No fear. What about us? I wanna eat meat, too. In the woods, the kids started bickering among themselves. Get along. Why you mustn't fight, sirs. Even though they'd caused the conflict in the first place, Pochi and Tama were doing their best to mediate. I thought I'd call them back and get the carriage moving, but one girl was stubbornly staying in the road, refusing to take the hint. She looked like she could be in middle school, but the AR display told me that she was the same age as Lulu, so technically she was a teenager. Are you going to head back into the forest yourself, or would you prefer me to throw you? Despite my slightly harsh words, the girl remained face down and unmoving in my path, as if nothing on earth could budge her. I started to lift the prone girl by her girdle but had to stop partway through. Her hand was stuck in a root that was embedded in the road. Yanking her up would probably hurt her, so I took a knife from my belt to free her. Elle let go of Totona. The apparent leader came rushing out of the woods with a club in hand. Ignoring him, I cut the root that had trapped Totona, lifted her up from the road, and hefted her over my shoulder. Lisa made to move toward the boy, frantically waving his club, so I stopped her with a motion of my hand. Just as he swung at me, I plucked it out of his grip and knocked him down with a gentle push from my foot. This dazed him for a moment, so I picked him up by the belt and tossed him into the woods toward his friends. I threw the girl Totona in after him. When I returned to the carriage, Arisa handed me a meal that she'd taken out from our bag of holding, so I placed it on the side of the road. Kids though they were, they'd still attacked us, so we gave them some of the more unappetizing rations. As we resumed our journey, Lisa made Tama and Pochi kneel in the carriage as she scolded them. Apparently, slaves were strictly prohibited from giving away their master's belongings without permission. I didn't think it was a big deal, since it was only snacks, but I'd entrusted Lisa with their education. I didn't want to undermine her, so I decided to reassure them later. Mia was riding Lisa's horse in her stead. As the lecture continued in the background, I opened the map to check out the next leg of our journey. First, we would cross the river ahead and proceed west on the road bordering the large forest on the other side. We'd reach the back road that led into the heart of the forest in about 3 days. Since the side road seemed too narrow for the carriage to traverse, we'd have to procure more horses in the town near the forest. The more pressing problem, however, was the mysterious militia of old people on the bank of the river. They'd probably come from the nearest village to fish, but the lack of young people among them struck me as a bit odd. Are you worrying about those children from earlier, by any chance? Arisa sat down next to me, acting rather like a counselor. No, now I'm worried about this elderly army. Elderly. Surprise. Arisa tilted her head with a confused expression. It was a cute gesture coming from a little girl, but I would never hear the end of it if I said as much, so I kept that to myself. Yeah, elderly. I patted Arisa's head as I repeated the statement. After the encounter with the kid bandits, our carriage traveled on for about 2 hours until we arrived at the riverbank. The elderly group that I detected before was still there. They weren't even fishing in the river, there were just 8 or so of them keeping warm around a fire. In fact, the river was almost completely dried up, with only a few pathetic trickles of water in the middle, so I guess fishing would have been impossible. Since the river looked like it had once been fairly wide, an earthquake or something must have changed its course. The elderly group noticed us, but they made no move to react. At first glance, they looked homeless, but camping out in such a dangerous land would normally be suicide. I was a little intrigued, so I stopped the carriage on the opposite side of the road from them and brought Lisa with me as an escort to go make contact with them. As a peace offering, I'd brought a bottle of liquor and some smoked bear meat. I'd figured out during my item box test in Sedum City that I could create a sort of smoke box inside it, which was how I'd made this smoked meat. Unfortunately, since there was nowhere for the smoke to escape, most of the meat had gotten over smoked and developed a strange taste and smell. This smoked bear meat was one of the few successful results. Hello there. The sunshine is warm today, isn't it? Oh, a merchant, is it? What business might you have with an old man like me? When I spoke to the man who seemed to be the leader, he gave me a surprisingly polite response. The other elderly folk were ordinary enough, but this person projected a degree of status. On top of being level 13, he had the skills, etiquette, calculation, and penmanship. Perhaps he had once been a civil official in the service of some noble. Please pardon me for intruding. We stopped our carriage to refill our water supply in the stream and happened to notice all of you here, so I simply thought I would come and greet you. It was a lame excuse, but they probably wouldn't mind. Before the leader could respond, the other old people all started talking at once. Awful polite, aren't ya? Just think of us geezers as a coupler rocks by the roadside. It's true, we can't even admire the river till we go home to heaven anymore. And if we return to the village, we'll just be a burden on our sons and daughters. If we are meant to sell our grandkids, I'd rather the gods just take me right here. But you're always welcome here if ya got some food. Boy, if I ever eat another meal, I might just float up to heaven with happiness. Ain't that the truth? I guess instead of abandoning their elderly on mountains like in those old folktales, they abandon them at rivers here. Now, don't make that face. It's alright, an old woman chimed in, eyeing me with concern. I have the poker face skill, so she shouldn't have been able to guess my feelings from my expression, but something about my aura must have given it away. Right, we left TH village on our own so there'd be less mouths to feed. And if us geezers get out of the way quicker, then maybe those poor gals won't have to sell themselves. Yeah, especially since the chief was saying there ain't been many merchants buying slaves lately. So without anyone to buy their daughters, now they were sacrificing their elderly. Apparently, monsters rarely attack near this river, so they were simply waiting here quietly for their lives to run out. They didn't know why this place was safe from monsters. The map showed the remains of a fort on the mountain behind the riverside camp, so maybe that was why. Well, I brought this as a sign of friendship. I handed the wine and smoked meat over to the leader. He distributed it right away to the other old folks, who were practically mad with glee. You would never guess that their status is red, starving and overworked from this display of energy. Oh ho ho, it's booze, I tell ya, booze. What a heavenly smell, Sonny. How many years has it been? Oh ho, there's some nice meat here, too. Smear, Sir Merchant, why don't you and your lovely guard there join us by the fire? Looks like we'll get to make one more good memory afore we die. Is it alright for us to eat this for them kids come back? A few of these comments were a little morbid, but overall everyone seemed happy. That last remark from one of the old ladies was probably in reference to the kid bandits we met earlier. We still have extra supplies, so I'll give you some more before we go. Well, that's awful kind of ya. Now, have a drink. I accepted the little teacup of alcohol offered by one of the old men and knocked it back. Oh, the boy can drink. As I shared a few rounds with the elderly folks, I had them tell me rumors about the area and such. According to them, the kid bandits were serf children who'd been driven out of a nearby farm village to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Since I didn't end up needing a guard, I sent Lisa back to the others to have them set up camp. We'd planned on resting a little way up the stream on the other side anyway, so it wouldn't be a big deal to do it here instead. I asked Lisa to prepare enough wheat porridge and a stew of sinewy meat and potatoes to feed a large number of people. My reasoning was that the old folks didn't normally eat much, so the wheat porridge would help with digestion while the stew would fill them up. The sinewy meat would take longer to chew and feel especially satisfying. This would involve peeling a lot of potatoes, so the younger kids were helping with that as well. One time, I was surrounded by skeleton monsters, and I thought for sure I was a goner. This all story again. The leader's face was red from the liquor as he started to speak, and another old man interrupted him. Was this back when the territory was a marquisate? I asked. Yes, that's right. Back then, undead monsters were springing up all over. It was like they were rising from the shadows of buildings. You must have been lucky to survive. Well, strangely enough, the monsters only attacked nobility or soldiers who attacked them first. So the undead kings then hadn't attacked people indiscriminately. But the real danger came after that. What happened? The Marquis burned down the whole city to get rid of the monsters. That seems excessive. It was indeed. Huge flaming shells rained down on the city, burning up monsters and citizens alike. That was the real hell on earth, the leader said in a trembling voice. It really was amazing that he'd survived such a calamity. Then was the current Mono City rebuilt after that? No, I wasn't in Mono City at the time. Apparently, the one who'd abducted Zen's wife wasn't the Marquis himself but his younger brother. Thus, Zen had attacked the city where the Marquis's brother was serving as viceroy. Still, any weapon used to burn down an entire city must have been truly terrible. Yes, the magic cannon in Marquis Mono's castle was inherited from an ancient empire. An ancient empire. So it's an ancient empire this time. Now there's a key phrase. My fantasy-obsessed middle school self would be swooning right about now. I wonder if this magic cannon is different from the one in that anti-dragon defense tower Xena showed me back in Seiryu City. Oh yes, before the Shiga Kingdom was founded. To summarize the leader's somewhat tedious explanation, the ancient civilization in question was an orc empire that had existed before the Shiga Kingdom was founded, stretching from then Mono Marquisate to present-day Ugoch Duchy to the south. And with the magic cannon installed, Mono City was on the front line of the battle between the demon lord that ruled the orc empire and the hero of the saga empire. Wait, so this magic cannon could be fired in the city? It probably used a mana source for power, but if it could attack a city that was dozens of miles away, it sounded like my meteor shower spell. However, the magic cannon is gone now. The undead king was said to have destroyed it when he killed Marquis Mono. By the time the leader's captivating tale was finished, the sunset was casting long shadows over the camp. Hey, geezers, we brought some food. It's not weeds today. Covered in leaves and spiderwebs, the kid bandits came tumbling out of the woods behind the fire, where I was sitting with the old folks. Hey, it's the guy from before. You didn't come to take back the food, did you? He got here ahead of us. The other kids spotted me among the elderly and crowded anxiously behind their leader. Can't they see we're having a relaxed little banquet over here? Oh, master, dinner is all ready. Have Lisa bring it over, please. Let's eat together. I'd already discussed this with the old folks group, so the kids were the only ones caught off guard. Lisa and Nana carried a large pot over to us and placed it beside the bonfire. I'd made a whole bunch of wooden bowls during our stay in Sedum City, so there would be enough for a group of this number. Even after the old folks and my own party had served their portions, the kid bandits made no move to line up for food. You don't like wheat porridge? I asked. The boy in front was still radiating hostility, so I addressed the girl next to him instead. No, I love it. Then come eat with us. Despite my invitation, the children were still guardedly keeping their distance. Come on now, children, eat with us. Have a seat already, sonnies. When the old men held out bowls of porridge to them, they finally gave in to temptation and timidly accepted some food. Why yummy. It's not weeds at all. Whoa, something else smells good, too. There's meat in the stew over here. For real. You're right, it's meat. With a rather strange comment among their cheers, the children began devouring the meal gleefully. Make sure you chew thoroughly before you swallow, or your stomachs will pay for it later, Arisa advised. This little lass is right, your kids better chew up good. We may never get to eat like this again, you know. Don't say such dark things in the middle of a meal, fool. The old guy followed up with an ominous remark, but the old lady next to him whacked him in the head. Just then, Pochi, who was the first to clear her plate, started a war with a single sentence. Seconds, please, sir. The young bandits jolted with nearly audible tension at the word. As the one eating closest to the pot, Nana nodded expressionlessly and doled out more food to her. Having already finished their food, a few of the young boys gnawed on their spoons a little as they enviously watched Pochi receive seconds. No need to be modest, you lot. If you want more, then go and get some, Arisa said to them, noticing the situation. As soon as they heard her, the children who'd already finished their food rushed up to Nana. The other young boys and girls who hadn't finished yet started wolfing down their food. A few of them started choking in their haste, and the older folks chided them to chew your food upright. No need to rush if you want seconds. There's plenty more, I said, excusing myself. We might run out of what we'd made at this rate, so I headed to the kitchen area by the carriage to make more food. Lulu and Lisa rushed over to help, and I used the garage bag to take some hydra meat out of storage, cutting it into bite-sized pieces and putting them on skewers. At this point, it would probably be best to make 2 per person. Do ya need any help, then? Excuse me, but if we can help at all. We'll help. An elderly lady, the girl Totona, and a younger girl who seemed to be her sister came over to help out. Thanks to the 3 extra pairs of hands, preparing the meat skewers for cooking took less time than I'd expected. Figuring we might as well serve them freshly cooked, I returned to the bonfire with a tray of meat skewers on wire mesh. Yay! Meat skewers, sir. Smelling the meat skewers as they started to cook, Tama and Pochi waved their arms overhead with joy. The children who were eating their second helpings nearly dropped their spoons as they stared at the meat skewers Lulu was cooking. Mia, always a light eater, moved to an area where the smoke from the meat wouldn't bother her and started playing the lute. Her joyful songs matched the atmosphere. The shouts of delight from the children as they feasted on the skewers mingled with the music of the lute underneath the starry sky. The children grew drowsy after they'd eaten their fill, so they began filing into a large ditch next to the bonfire. I wondered how deep it was and peered into the hole. It was only about 6 feet, enough for the 9 children to be concealed as they huddled together inside. To ward off the wind, they put a mat woven from grass or something similar over the hole. The old folks had a sleeping pit of their own. This looked terribly cold, so I offered them some brown wolf and bear furs that I'd been stockpiling in storage. We shared a meal together as friends. It should be all right for me to meddle just a little. Hey, Mr. Merchant. What is it? One of the boys approached me, the one who tried to protect Totona with a club. According to the AR display, he was her younger brother. This is for the food. And to make up for attacking you earlier today. The boy held out a smooth, wood-carved object. It looked like 3 2-inch wooden cubes, each connected to the other 2. When I accepted it from the boy's hands, it was heavier than I'd expected. According to my AR display, it wasn't wood at all but a metal called Damascus steel. Upon closer inspection, there were several reddish streaks that might have been joining points. With the help of my now neglected analyze skill, I learned that it was an all-purpose magic key apparatus, but I had no idea what kind of lock it might be for. Did you make this yourself? I didn't think he had, but I figured it was a good prompt to find out where it came from. No, I found it on the mountain. What's that, Sonny? I told you never to go up there. One of the old men jabbed a finger at the mountain and scolded the boy in a spray of spittle. Wondering if there was a dangerous creature up there, I checked the map. There hadn't been anything there during the day, but now the ruined fortress was full of 30 or more monsters like skeleton soldiers and a wraith. The skeleton soldiers were around level 10, but the wraith was level 25. In particular, the latter had the hereditary skills, paralysis, fear, kin control, and life drain. It was even able to use ice magic. Even if these things appeared only at night, it was alarming to think such dangerous monsters were so near these elderly folks and small children. There were also wild boars roaming the mountain, one of which was level 15. Is there something living on that mountain? This time I spoke to the old man who'd scolded the boy. The vengeful ghosts of nobles appear there at night. And during the day, a huge boar we call One Eye wanders around there. A large boar might be a good source of food, though. Sure, if we could kill it. 3 former soldiers once went into the woods to hunt all One Eye, and only one came back alive. The old man heaved a sigh. So they regarded this boar as the master of the mountain, then. We were getting low on boar meat anyway, so I decided we could pay a visit to the ruined fortress to help level up my kids. The next day, we rode the 4 horses up the path leading to the fort ruins. We left the carriage down at the foot of the mountain. Today's missions were wild boar hunting and exterminating the monsters at the fort. My plan was that I would defeat the dangerous-looking wraiths with my magic or a holy sword, and the other small fry monsters would serve as express for my kids. Incidentally, the pairs on each horse were Nana and Pochi, Lisa and Arisa, Mia and Lulu, and Pochi and me. Rest in peace. Sitting in front of me, Tama pointed toward a cliffside near the mountain road. What is it? There's boons. I followed Tama's finger to something like an old rug caught in the rocks partway up the cliff, and sure enough, I could see flashes of white. Nearby, I also caught a glimpse of what seemed to be a knife handle. As I squinted at it, an AR display popped up that read mithril dagger. Oh, I wasn't expecting to find that classic fantasy metal in a place like this. Tama, take the reins for a minute. Aye. I left Tama in charge of the horse, told the others I was going to recover the deceased person's belongings, and headed down the steep slope. Once I reached the outcropping, I stored the bleached skeletal remains and items trapped in the rocks. Thank goodness I didn't have to touch things to put them in storage. Inside the satchel I'd found, there was a sturdy case with a number of books inside and a lever-like object made of the same material as the device the young boy had given me yesterday. The books had some disturbing titles. There were 2 larger volumes, Magic Canon, Noble Blood Maintenance Guide and Magic Canon, Noble Blood Operation Guide, and 3 smaller ones that seemed to be ciphers of some kind. These had to be connected to the magic cannon that the old folks leader had been talking about last night. The lever I'd found was apparently a magic cannon control stick, so the magic key apparatus the boy had given me yesterday must have belonged to this person, to perhaps a member of the aristocracy connected to Marquis Mono. These seemed like important, top-secret materials, but since the undead King Zen had destroyed the magic cannon some 20 years ago, they were probably nothing more than collector's items now. It was still morning when we arrived at the ruins on the summit. The trip up had taken about 2 hours. This former stronghold was larger than the fort at the border had been. It had probably fit 200 or 300 people while it was still standing. The steel portcullis had fallen, blocking the entrance. Even with the combined strength of all 4 members of our advance guard, it wouldn't open. Well, it was the main gate of a fortress, after all. While everyone was focused on the portcullis, I hopped over the outer wall and turned the crank to open the gate. As I crossed the wall, I felt myself breaking through some kind of barrier. I stared at the spot where I'd felt the barrier, but I didn't see anything. Unlike the barrier of the Forest of Illusions in Kohanu County, this one seemed to have disappeared completely when it was broken. We took a light lunch of warm soup and bread in the courtyard, then explored around the perimeter of the fort. Most of it was overrun with weeds, but Pochi and Tama eagerly took up their tools and quickly cleared a path. We arrived in the rear garden area. There, a few defenseless orange birds were pecking at some feed. There are eggs here, sir. The reason I'd steered us straight toward the backyard was that I'd noticed these birds on the map. Just like the chickens in modern Japan, these birds couldn't fly very well. They were slow moving, too, so Tama and Pochi could catch them easily. The orange chickens were all large and plump, enough to hide Pochi's face after she caught one. The eggs were a normal size, though, no bigger than your typical large chicken egg. Gay. What is it? Heading toward Arisa's fed-up voice, I found an area full of fresh parsley. Oh, parsley. Who are you calling parsley? I won't let anyone call me a parsley at this age. The least you could do is marry me until I become an adult, even if it's just a common law marriage, master. Arisa growled like an angry dog, frowning and jumping at me. Lulu, who was nearby, widened her eyes in surprise at her sister's behavior. What, does parsley mean an unmarried single woman or something? I've never heard anyone say that before, but it sounds like something from a girl's manga. I'm serious, and Lulu's my sister, so you should marry both of. Yeah, I'll consider it if you're still single in 10 years, alright. Arisa seemed to be heading toward an inappropriate comment, so I hurriedly cut her off. Really, it's a promise, then. Arisa pumped her fists in a pose more befitting a triumphant athlete than a little girl, then dashed away. How nice. My keen hearing skill alerted me to a tiny murmur from Lulu. I looked down and saw an earnest expression on her lovely face. If she kept staring at me with those beautiful features, I worried I'd be tempted to set foot on the dark path of the lollican. Maybe that's why I said such a stupid thing. Master, could I also? Sure, Lulu. If you're single in 10 years, too, I'll marry you along with Arisa. Yes. I got carried away and gave her an irresponsible reply. A hint of guilt needled my heart at the sight of such a huge smile on Lulu's face. Bigamy did seem to be allowed in this country, but I didn't know if I'd still be in this world in 5 years, never mind 10. I had arrived here suddenly, as if this were a dream. It wouldn't be too surprising if I returned just as abruptly as waking up from one. Besides, it wasn't as though I didn't have any attachments to my home world. Even if I was fated to stay here for good, I'd want to send letters to my friends and family first at least, so I was planning to go to the Saga Empire once everyone's future plans were settled. Well, I probably don't need to worry about this too seriously right now. If magic existed for summoning and sending people back, surely I could develop magic to allow me to move freely between the worlds within 10 years. Besides, there was no way Arisa and Lulu would stay single for 10 years. Oblivious to my innermost thoughts, Lulu pressed her hands to her cheeks and mumbled to herself. Hee, a bride, huh? Miss Lulu, stop it with the heart-melting smile while it's just the two of us, please. I nearly gave in to desire for a moment, but I managed to hold out by calling on my sense of reason. Master, if you'd like, please come over here and look at this. Luckily, a call from Lisa saved me from drowning in Lulu's pinkish aura. I headed toward her with Lulu in tow. After passing through an arch of withered roses, we found a water fountain among the sea of weeds. We suspected that there may be a trap, so nobody has approached it yet. Good thinking. After praising Lisa's cautiousness, I investigated the fountain. My trap detection skill wasn't reacting at all, and I didn't see anything on the map that looked like a trick, either. I think it's safe. After I gave my verdict, Lisa proceeded toward the fountain as an advanced scout, her spear still at the ready. Weeding Brigade. We'll do our best, sir. Tama and Pochi popped up immediately and hacked away at the flora in the hall leading to the fountain. They were very efficient. Satu. Mia tottered over to us through the arch, her arms full of vegetables. Is that broccoli and celery? They were a little different from the varieties I'd seen in Japan, but they were definitely some species of the familiar vegetables. Apparently, they'd been growing in the same corner as the parsley. Maybe we should make a broccoli stew for dinner, then, I suggested. Great. Mia gave an excited little nod. The beastfolk girls caught 3 goats that were on the other side of the fountain, and Nana held a little orange chick in the palm of her hand with delight. There were persimmon and plum trees growing in the backyard. The persimmons were sour, but I collected some of the fallen ones, figuring I could dry them out. For a place that was supposed to be a den of undead monsters, this area was quite peaceful. Clonk, clonk. With a fully armed Lisa leading the way, we strode into the entrance hall of the fort. Tama and Pochi walked behind Lisa, followed by Nana, Arisa, and Mia, and I brought up the rear. The entrance hall contained a stairwell leading up to the second floor, where light leaked in through a window. It was the sort of place where balls might have been hosted. Since the undead appear only at night, we decided to explore the fort during the day before the real battle at sunset. The skeletal remains of a number of soldiers were strewn about the entrance hall. Once night had fallen, these would probably begin to move. I should probably put them in storage in the daytime, then cremate and bury them later. Glancing over, I saw that Lulu looked very anxious. Arisa and Mia seemed a bit nervous, too. Don't be scared. It's perfectly safe during the day. As I attempted to reassure them, the loud bang of a door slamming shut interrupted me. At the same moment, specks of black appeared on the window and soon blotted out all the light from outside. Shrieking, Mia and Lulu latched onto me. With the aid of my night vision skill, I could see our advance guard team warily keeping watch in the darkness. I took my magic lamp out of storage and supplied it with some MP to illuminate the room. Kwe he, foolish vandals. You know not your place, daring to enter the secret base of the revival of the house of Marquis Mono. I couldn't see the source of the voice. There was nobody on my radar but us. Checking the map, I determined the enemy was one of the raids I'd noted last night. It was on the underground third floor of the fort. It hadn't shown up on my map when we first arrived here, so I had no idea where it came from. It was probably using a speaking tube or some occult type means to make its voice reach this room. Prepare to become the cornerstones of the revival of the Marquis's house, at the hands of our faithful soldiers. Sure enough, as the wraith spoke, the skeleton soldiers that had been lying on the floor arose. There were only 3 in this room, but more were approaching from other rooms, too. These enemies are strong, so take each of them on in pairs. I'll handle the last one. Understood. Aye. Yes, sir. Orders registered. Switching to combat doll mode. The 4 members of the advance guard promptly took action. I've never heard of the so-called combat doll mode before, though. Arisa was snickering at my side, so she must have taught Nana some weird phrase. Of course, there wasn't actually any change in Nana's status information. Once I'd taken out my target with a rock to the head from storage, I watched over the advance guard's battle. The skeleton soldiers' movements were jerky, but they attacked with fast overhead strikes. Those kinds of blows might kill you instantly if you let your guard down. While Pochi parried the heavy sword attacks with her small buckler, Tama aimed at the leg joints with her short sword. Since Tama's attacks were so light, a single direct hit wouldn't destroy anything. Still, she persisted, and the 4th attack finally broke the joint. The skeleton lost its balance and toppled over, and the 2 girls finished it off in a flurry of strikes. Nearby, Nana managed to use her shield to parry an attack from a skeleton soldier wielding a large axe. With the help of her foundation magic technique body strengthening, she managed to keep up with her opponent, if only barely. Luckily, Lisa was on the scene, shattering the skeleton's bones with a few rapid jabs of her spear. She appeared to be using the blunt end, not the tip. When the dust settled, all 3 of the skeleton soldiers in the room were defeated. The health gauges of the 2 shield users had declined slightly, but no one had any noticeable physical wounds. There were more soldiers heading toward us from the other rooms, so we could probably take care of healing later. All 3 of the Beastfolk girls had reached level 14 as a result of this battle. Each of them received a new skill: Strike, for Lisa, Thrust, for Pochi, and Enemy Detection, for Tama. However, they wouldn't be able to use these freely until they'd had a proper rest so that their bodies could adapt to the new skills. Even so, it had been a closer contest than I'd expected, so it might be wise to fortify the battlefield and make fighting a little easier. With that thought in mind, I set about creating a barricade. I wrapped a few poles in cloth and cast the shelter spell to create a lattice for defense. It was a dome with an entrance and some smaller holes for attacking. This would keep the rearguard safe while we fought. Next, I thought I should do something about the lighting. The magic lamp was illuminating the members of my party from behind, so their own shadows would hinder them as they fought. Mia, can you light the room? Mia cast a new spell I developed. Bubble Light Hotaru Awa. Several spheres materialized, like faintly glowing soap bubbles. The only problem with the spell was that the MP cost was high, since I'd used code from a light magic spell. When I checked in on everyone now that the room was lit, I noticed that Lulu was wearing a dark, brooding expression. Maybe the sight of the attacking skeleton scared her. Master, is there anything I can do to be of help? Lulu clasped her hands in front of her chest, her voice trembling as she spoke. Right, she had looked like she wanted to say something after we took care of those professional thieves, too. I was glad that the normally shy Lulu had spoken to me of her own volition, but I couldn't put her on the front lines without any kind of training. While I contemplated how to convince her of this, she pleaded with me further still. I want to be useful like everyone else. You don't need to worry about that. You are already useful, Lulu. That was the truth. I couldn't have her believing she was useless. Just before I could explain that everyone had their own roles, Arisa tugged on my sleeve. I looked over my shoulder at her. Master, perhaps Lulu could try one of those magic guns you used before. Oh yeah, I forgot about those. We decided to give Arisa's proposal a try. With that, Lulu should be able to participate in battle from a safe distance away. I put the magic lamp on the floor, took out the spare magic gun from storage, and handed it to Lulu. As a precaution in case of friendly fire, I put it on its lowest power setting. Aim this toward the monster. Then pull this bit, it's called the trigger, and a magic bullet will come out from the end of the barrel. Alright. I gave the magic gun to the nervous Lulu and had her do a test fire at a random pillar. Her first shot completely missed. Lulu, you don't need to be so tense. Try to relax. I moved behind her and put my hands over hers to demonstrate how to pull the trigger. Gently, like this. Alright. Right. Lulu's face was so red that steam was practically coming out of her ears. Right. I'd forgotten, since she'd gotten used to me lately, but Lulu was still pretty uncomfortable with men. Sorry. I was too close. I stepped back, and Lulu gave a despairing little, ah. If I was a pubescent boy like my current appearance indicated, I might have fallen in love with that voice. However, since I'm around 30 years old on the inside, the majority of what I felt toward Lulu was the protectiveness of a guardian. So, although she was looking up at me with a strangely sexy expression, I remained deliberately serious and had her do another test fire. She took to the magic gun faster than I'd expected, and after a few more tries, she had the hang of it. However, since Lulu's magic ran out after just 2 shots, she had to depend on potions to recover it. Arisa and Mia wanted to use the magic gun, too, so I let them practice while Lulu was taking a break. With our newly established barricade, the next battle was much easier. Lulu, Arisa, and Mia took turns using the magic gun to attack the skeleton soldiers, then finished them off with spears or stones. Anytime one of the soldiers tried to attack with a long weapon, I forcibly yanked it from their grasp. During the third round of this tension-free, almost game-like battle, Lisa's spear started producing a red light. It always happened just as she landed a powerful strike, so maybe it was a visual effect to indicate that a skill had been used. Lisa's MP gauge had decreased slightly, so magic was involved. We had a bit of time until the next enemy's arrival, so I took down the current shelter wall and put up a new one. Then I decided to have Lisa show me her technique again before the next battle. Lisa, can you show me that last spear strike again? The last strike. Lisa repeated the movement despite her puzzlement, but this time there was no red light like before. I took out a spear from storage by way of the garage bag. I'd gotten this one during the cradle incident, and it had a similar design to Nana's rapier. I tried to recreate Lisa's movement with the spear. Of course, it didn't make a red light, and it didn't even cause a powerful sound like Lisa's did. It was probably because I was taking care not to put a hole in the floor with my excessive strength, but still, my little F-whoosh was disappointing compared to the loud boom that Lisa's attacks normally produced. That was an excellent thrust. I was a little embarrassed to have Lisa compliment me on such a weak attempt. Pardon me, master, if I may. Unable to watch any more of my repeated failures, Lisa stood behind me and put her hands over mine on the spear to explain. When you land a thrust, it's best to flick your wrist to rotate the spear on impact, like so. Keep a loose grip on the spear, then tighten it the moment that you strike. I'll demonstrate slowly, so please pay attention to my fingers and wrist. Lisa demonstrated the timing for me with her hands on mine. I could see why. It was difficult to understand this from a verbal explanation. Once Lisa stepped away, I tried it out for myself. Yeah, that's better. Impressive as always, master. You've taken the main point to heart with just one demonstration. Only because you're such a good teacher, Lisa. It was true that her teaching was excellent, but the reason that I'd been able to learn so quickly was probably that I had a maxed out spear skill. I tried it a few more times to memorize the sensation. Now my thrusts looked much closer to Lisa's, but I still couldn't produce the red light from my spear. I probably needed a different skill for that. The clattering of bones from across the room announced the arrival of 2 more skeleton soldiers. I had everyone take a strike so that they'd all gain express before I finished off the enemies. I struck the first one in the skull, sternum, and spine in 3 rapid-fire attacks. Greater than skill acquired, thrust. Greater than skill acquired, strike. Greater than skill acquired, pierce. Greater than skill acquired, consecutive attacks. Just like that, I gained all sorts of skills. I put skill points into them and activated them, then defeated the second skeleton. Sadly, I still couldn't get my spear to shine. Maybe Lisa had learned some new trick that she hadn't acquired as a skill yet. She had used up some magic, and the red glow was identical to that of a charged magic tool, so magic had to be related somehow. Master, a newcomer has arrived. I'm good now. Take it down the same way as before, please. Understood. I left Lisa in charge of directing combat, then tried inserting some magic power into the steel spear. It felt strange. If I had to put it into words, I'd say it was most like pouring water into a pipe that was clogged with clay and full of holes. It was hard to get the magic to go through, and even when it did, it leaked straight out like a sieve. Oh right, I did read in a book about magic tools that iron has a magic diffusing effect. When I forced some magic into it, it lit up red for just a moment, but an instant later there was a dry crack, and the tip of the spear split. Nobody but Tama seemed to notice the sound amid the clamor of battle, so I quickly switched it out with another spear of the same design in storage and pretended nothing had happened. As for Tama, I gestured, don't tell a soul. In return, Tama signaled okay with a hand. Then I decided to borrow Lisa's spear after the battle and try the experiment again. Lisa, could you lend me your spear for a minute? Understood. Lisa handed the spear over to me reverently, and I accepted it and lightly put some magic into it. I didn't want to overdo it and break the spear, so I was very careful to use a small amount. It was far easier to infuse the spear than the steel one, and a faint red light emitted from the joints of the spear. I tried adding a little more magic. This time, I faintly sensed something sticking. It was the same feeling as when I first tried to replenish Nana's magic. Remembering that time, I finally adjusted the strength of the magic flow, clearing the pathway of magic through the weapon as I had with Nana's body. Greater than skill acquired, magic tool tuning. Greater than title acquired, tuner. This must have paid off, because now the tip and other parts of the spear were glowing after just a single point of magic. When I swung the weapon, it left a beautiful trail of red light. Greater than skill acquired, dance performance. Greater than title acquired, dancer. This didn't seem like it'd be useful in combat, since it would let my opponents read the trajectory of the spear, but it might be nice for some kind of dance performance. Is that Spellblade? Arisa murmured. So that's what Spellblade looks like. Wonderful. Master, I had no idea you were able to use such an art. It takes countless years for master martial artists to grasp. Lisa melodramatically heaped on the praise. Is it a famous art? Well, I think each territory only has 2 or 3 people who can use it. Still, if you went to the royal capital of a large kingdom like Shiga, I'm sure there'd be dozens. Lisa's hyperbole had me thinking that this was some amazing ability, but I guess it wasn't all that rare. Or maybe it is. If you are going by people per territory, it'd certainly be rarer than item box or analyze. Should I not use it in front of people, then? Perhaps not. I've heard that nobles consider it a status symbol to employ knights with the ability, so if people find out that you can use it, you'll be in high demand. So using it in public would seal my fate, huh? I thanked Lisa and returned her spear, then tried doing it with the steel again. It didn't go well, though, maybe because I didn't have the skill for it. Clearly, weapons made with monster parts like Lisa's spear were well suited to spellblade use. I would guess that the holy swords and sacred blades in storage would work even better, but it would be silly to test that out here. After 20 skeleton soldiers, their assault was over, so now it was our turn to attack. However, a situation arose that made me wonder if we should retreat instead. Lulu wasn't looking too well. Lulu, are you alright? Oh, don't worry about me. Arisa hovered over Lulu with concern as she sat on the floor. Maybe she has level up sickness. Really? So that's not just an urban legend, Arisa said with surprise, and I nodded. Lulu had gone from level 2 to level 6 in the battle and gained 4 skills: casting, shooting, driving, and cooking. The other kids hadn't leveled up at all. The casting skill seemed to be a result of her having practiced magic with Arisa a long time ago. I was really very jealous. After a moment of discussion, we decided that I would carry her on my back. It would be dangerous to leave her alone here, after all, and she'd be safest if she stayed close to me. It was then that I made a new discovery. Although not much time had passed since we'd first met, Lulu's chest had grown. She had been an A cup before, but now she definitely crossed well into B cup territory. She is in her growth spurt, after all. Let's hope this trend will continue as she gets older. As I cheered her on in the depths of my mind, we arrived safely at the underground third floor, in front of the room where the Wraith was lurking. Along the way, we defeated 6 more skeleton soldiers that tried to stop us. They were a bit stronger than the ones on the upper floors, but there was nothing else of note about them. Since the Wraith in this room had a paralysis attack, I decided to make anti-paralysis potions for everyone. It was a pretty simple recipe, so I blanked out my name and produced them easily. Alright, now we're ready to go. Finally, it's time for the boss battle. The boss can use ice magic, so I'll head in first and take it out. The rest of you, wait a bit before you come in after me. There are 4 stronger skeleton soldiers in there, too, so I'm leaving those to you. Understood. Seriously, Miss Lisa, we can't just let him charge in there on his own. Arisa, Master can defeat a single Wraith with these, I report. Arisa was the only one opposed to my strategy. I'll be fine, alright. You don't need to worry about me unless the enemy's a greater hell demon or something. Greater. I gave a joking reply, then had everyone evacuate to some distance away from the door. Master, please use this, at least. Lisa handed me her beloved spear. I believe the spear you currently have will not allow for effective spellblade use. Ideally, I would prefer to accompany you, but I understand that I am not nearly strong enough to do so. And if I can at least offer you my spear. Alright, I'll borrow it for a minute, then. I accepted Lisa's spear and handed her the steel one instead. I had planned on using a holy sword to get the spellblade skill once I got inside, but I didn't want Lisa's kindness to go to waste, so I accepted her loan gratefully. Quay, so you have come to seek your own deaths, foolish vandals. The great house of Marquis Monoville. When I entered the room, the Wraith started giving some kind of speech, but I didn't really care enough to listen. The hall had a high ceiling, like an audience chamber. At the far end was a throne, upon which sat a skeleton dressed in the tattered remains of aristocratic clothing. The semi-translucent Wraith was superimposed on the skeleton, and its pallid complexion most likely bore a faint resemblance to what it had looked like in life. And 4 skeletal guards in full plate mail flanked it. Still ignoring the Wraith's speech, I approached the throne briskly, powering up Lisa's spear as I did so. I was careful not to use too much magic, lest I accidentally break it. And so, with the house of the Marquis buried under this land. I was only about 15 feet away, yet the Wraith was still just pontificating. It was probably controlled by an obsession it had when it died. Once I got the spellblade skill, I figured I'd exorcise it with a divine blade. If I used a holy sword, it was more likely to obliterate the soul than send it to a peaceful rest. With a firm step forward, I swept out the spear for an instant, creating a trail of red light. My strike and thrust skills activated, and the momentum carried me into a powerful attack through the Wraith's soldier into the empty space beyond. The moment the glowing red tip of the spear touched the Wraith, it vanished away, leaving behind a ripple like a single drop of black paint on the surface of a lake. Greater than skill acquired, spellblade. Oops, was that too strong? Just then, either I got too distracted or I messed up by using unnecessary skills, because Lisa's spear started vibrating strangely. Oh crap. It must have been reaching its limit. Red streaks were starting to appear on the black surface of the spear, like it was about to crack. I hurriedly drew the magic back out of the spear. This time, I was careful not to remove it all at once. It could break like a hot cup that had been doused in cold water too suddenly, and I didn't want that. The spear was still tinged with magic, but the strange vibration had stopped. I tried swinging it a few times. Luckily, the balance hadn't changed, and the red streaks didn't seem to have left any cracks or scratches on the surface. The red streaks closely resembled the hardened circuit liquid of magic tool creation. Since the spear was made from monster parts, maybe it was exposed to the same components as monster cores, or even made up of a crystallized version. After a quick appraisal of the spear, I realized its performance had greatly improved. I didn't exactly remember what its stats had been originally, but I was pretty sure it had been similar to the steel spear, and now it was nearly 7 times stronger. It still didn't compare to my holy swords, but it was an unusual increase in performance. Its name had even changed, from Black Cave Cricket Spear to Magic Cricket Spear. I had to wonder what the naming standards were exactly. It was being treated as a completely different item from before the transformation, as the name of its creator had changed to a blank. I must have forgotten to change my name back after I created those anti-paralysis potions before. Greater than title acquired, Magic Spearsmith. Greater than skill acquired, Imbue Magic. Greater than skill acquired, Weapon Enhancement. The kids entered the room, following Lisa. Oh my, is it over already? Arisa asked. Yeah, I guess so. I noticed that the plate mail-clad skeletons had collapsed to the floor, their bones scattering everywhere. I guess when their master perished, the underlings disappeared too. I'm sorry, Lisa. Your spear looks different now. Is this a pattern, not cracks? Surprise. Lisa stroked the surface of the magic cricket spear. Then she slowly swung it in the air a few times experimentally. Perhaps it's my imagination, but it's as if my senses travel all the way to the tip of the spear now, even more so than before. With that comment, she gave a more powerful strike, and the red streaks lit up in response. I see. Could it be that you've remodeled it so that I might learn to use Spellblade? I wanted to correct her misunderstanding, but she seemed so happy that I couldn't bring myself to tell her. The next morning, I would end up confessing that I had almost broken the spear and meekly apologize. Wait just a minute. There's a hidden door over here. Arisa pulled back the tapestry behind the throne and beckoned to me. According to my analyze skill, the coat of arms on the tapestry belonged to Marquis Mono. My trap detection skill was sounding the alarm, so I had Arisa pull back while I disarmed the snare. Then I stepped into the hidden room. For some reason, there were two slimes in the corners of the room, so I disposed of them and put the remains in storage. After ensuring there were no more dangers, I called the others into the room. Wow, so shiny, sir. How very remarkable. Whoa, what is this? Everyone entered the room and exclaimed with surprise at the piles of treasure. There was a heap of what must have been 10,000 gold Shigan coins, statues made of precious metals, and jewelry on display. Along the walls of the room, there were piles of boxes full of equipment. Mithril weapons were lined up on beautiful display stands. The objects wrapped in oiled paper were probably paintings of some kind. There wasn't a single rusted item or speck of dust in here. The slimes had probably been for cleaning and rust removal. I should have captured them without killing them. I told the kids that they could look at whatever they liked, and everyone began searching the room. Pochi and Tama ran around the mountain of gold coins. Lisa asked my permission before inspecting the weapons. Mia examined the silver musical instruments with an inscrutable expression, and Arisa scooped up gold coins with both hands, cackling something about filling a bathtub. Everyone seems to be having a great time. As for myself, I discovered a magic satchel like the garage bag wrapped in oiled paper in the corner by some wooden boxes. It was stuffed with books and documents. Most of it was territorial tax revenue reports and information on a proposed mining site, but there were some intermediate and advanced spell books too. Sadly, there weren't any scrolls. The bag itself was about the same size as my garage bag, but its capacity was far less. Still, even 10 cubic feet of space was pretty impressive. As I put the lesser garage bag in storage, Nana appeared in the doorway, carrying Lulu. This is amazing. Is it a treasury? I inquire. Looks that way. Marquis Muno's family must have hidden away this treasure for the revival of their house. But from what I'd heard, it didn't seem like any relatives of Marquis Muno were around anymore, so it was probably fine for us to do as we liked. It'd be a good reward for exterminating the trait. After I told everyone to let me know if they wanted anything, I joined in on exploring the items. Greater than title acquired, grave robber. Greater than title acquired, treasure hunter. I acquired a rather insulting title in the process, but I ignored it as I rummaged through the loot. Master. Lisa beckoned to me from the back of the room. Enshrined there was an egg-like object the size of a truck. The AR display called it magic cannon, noble blood. The very same weapon of mass destruction that the older man had told me about. If the cops we'd found in the mountains had gotten here alive, a new massacre might have taken place. What could it be? Probably some kind of magic tool. Can you check those weapons again and see if there's anything we can use? I'll take care of this. Understood. Once Lisa had gone to the other side of the room, I put the magic cannon in storage and created a magic cannon folder for it and all the related items and materials. It was best to lock away a dangerous thing like this. As long as it was in my storage, nobody should be able to misuse it. It was our 10th morning in the Muno barony, 3 days after we'd defeated the Wraith. We were still staying in the fortress. Perhaps the children and the elderly could live here somehow. After Arisa made this remark, we had called the old folks and the young bandits and started fixing up the fort. I wasn't very enthusiastic at first, but once we started, it reminded me of making a secret base as a kid. I ended up enjoying it, reliving a bit of my childhood. We repaired the broken well and fixed up one of the barracks to a habitable state, then gave the old folks some cloth and fur that they could use to mend their flimsy clothes. Next, we dug a field in the courtyard so that they'd be able to grow food starting in the spring. For produce, I gave some gabo fruit to the leader of the elderly. They were the same ones I'd confiscated from the thieves before. We had the kids teach us what wild grasses were edible and collected them while the beast folk girls and I went wild boar hunting. Aside from the edible wild grass, we collected an abundance of gourds that bore a resemblance to winter melons. They weren't good to eat raw, but they would likely work well in stew or stir fry. Mia was very pleased. As for the immediate food supply, we all worked together to make smoked food and dried meat in large quantities. I took the monster meat out of storage, but I told everyone that we'd hunted in the mountains. To ensure their safety, I placed a normal holy stone in the center of the fort. Since the leader of the elderly group had a relatively high level, he should be able to supply it with magic. I made a wooden frame around the holy stone so it'd look like it was part of the original fortress, which landed me a few shady skills like disguise and destruction of evidence. Then, after we stayed 3 days to make sure that the undead monsters wouldn't be resurrected, we decided to depart from the fort. Before we left, we held a memorial service with the kids and old folks for the bones I'd found in the mountains. This wasn't so much to mourn the dead as it was to ensure that they wouldn't come back again. Then just as we were saying our farewells to the fortress, the children called out to stop us. Mr. Merchant, this is a thank you gift from all of us. The girl Totona's little sister handed me a small pouch. Inside was a collection of beautiful pebbles that they'd gathered by the riverbank. It was most likely the children's treasure. The mix even contained real gemstones and ore. I reached for one stone from the collection and gave the rest back to them. I'll take one, but you should hang on to the rest of them, all right? Okay. The girl hid bashfully behind her older sister. After receiving words of thanks and farewells from the old folks and the kids, we descended the mountain. We'd stayed a little longer than planned, but since we weren't in any particular rush on our journey, it wasn't a big deal. Our carriage took us past the riverbank where the old folks had been encamped and across a sturdy stone bridge. Then, at the crossroads with the main road on the other side, we changed our path to follow the dried-up river. Sitting on the warm carriage floor, I rolled the pebble I'd gotten earlier between my hands. There were much prettier gems in that bag. Why'd you choose such a plain one? It's a treasure to me. Arisa peered at the pebble in confusion, so I gave a somewhat pretentious response. This opaque red pebble was called a serpent's bloodstone, and it was used as raw material in alchemy. Like the dragon powder I'd bought in bulk in Seiryu City, it was one of the components of a universal antidote. I was still missing other materials, so I couldn't make one just yet, but it couldn't hurt to have it on hand. Apparently, Totona's little sister had found it in the dried-up river along the main road. After I did a map search for serpent's bloodstone, I found that there were a large number in the dry riverbed. Thus, we took a little detour to collect the stones and camped out nearby for the night. The barbecued wild boar we ate that evening was exceptional.